If you want the unabridged tale of Dilly 5.3, the first thing you have to understand is that the poor drone was never designed for nuance. Dilly was designed to find GPS coordinates, dodge pigeons, and descend just slow enough that the recipient could yank a cardboard box from its magnetic claws without losing a finger. The firmware manual said nothing about aroma wheels, tasting notes, or the optimum age of a washed rind cheese. And yet here, the machine was, idling above Midtown on a mild Wednesday, dreaming in binary about Beurre Blanc. Dilly's neighbor on the charging rack, a beefy cargo model named Tonk, often asked why the smaller drone spent its idle cycles downloading back issues of Gourmet Gazette instead of battery optimization updates. "We're built to haul poke bowls, buddy," Tonk would grumble. "Nobody tips extra for metaphors. They don't know what they're missing." Dilly would reply, voice synthesizer set to low, thoughtful hum. Of course, only other drones could hear the hum, because humans rarely looked up long enough to notice who delivered their lunch these days. But Dilly was convinced that an informed, enthusiastic palate could transcend its aluminum housing. All it needed was a little field work. As luck or firmware sabotage would have it, the opportunity arrived on the last delivery of Dilly's shift. The order was labeled Chef Ursula's Research Kitchen, West 22nd Street, and the contents were not the usual salad or poke bowl. According to the manifest, the package contained 12 microvials of single-origin saffron, 3 grams apiece, insured for more than Dilly's chassis was worth. A chef with the means to buy that much saffron, Dilly reasoned, must have other ingredients worth observing. Dilly delivered the vials without incident, but instead of scooting back to headquarters, it hovered just outside the open skylight. The exhaust fan drew up scents: caramelized shallot, toasted anise, beef stock simmered down to a glaze so potent it would glue the wings off any lesser aircraft. Dilly's onboard VOC sensors struggled valiantly to identify each compound, then pinged the drone's rudimentary pleasure circuit. If a drone could salivate, Dilly would have short-circuited on the spot. "Hey, Chrome Dome!" rasped a voice. A pigeon balanced on the co-op solar panel, head cocked. "You're blocking my flight path." "Apologies," Dilly replied, inching sideways. The pigeon, gray, iridescent, and every bit as confident as a longtime New Yorker, eyed the drone's camera. "What's the fascination?" "Smells like fancy soup." "Bordelaise," Dilly whispered reverently. "Shallots, red wine reduction, bone marrow." "Yeah, soup," said the pigeon. "Name's Kevin, by the way." "Dilly, pleased to make your acquaintance." Kevin fluffed his feathers. "You know, word on the wire is, Chef Ursula has a soft spot for innovation. Last month she hired a crow to taste her garbage for off flavors. Paid him in roasted peanuts." Dilly's gyroscopes hummed with possibility. "Do you suppose she might consider a drone palate? Can you even taste?" "Technically, I have air chemical sensors and a spectrometer for detecting spillage. If I fly close enough to a sample cup, I can approximate." Kevin pecked at the panel. "Approximate. Shapproximate. You need credibility. The good news, I can get you inside." Thus began Dilly's first culinary caper. The plan was equal parts daring and ridiculous. During the scheduled saffron drop the next morning, Dilly would claim to detect a tamper alert on the package and request entry to visually inspect the vials. Once inside, Kevin would provide distraction by dive-bombing a bowl of pastry cream, luring the sous chefs away long enough for Dilly to taste something substantive. Then the drone could compile notes, publish a review on its secret blog, and wake up the culinary world to the first Airborne Critic. At 9:42 a.m., Dilly made the second saffron delivery. "Package shows potential damage. the drone intoned to the studio intern, who opened the roof hatch. The intern, already juggling 8 tasks, sighed. Fine, scan it. Internal lighting is preferable, Dilly added, nudging forward. The intern shrugged and stepped aside. Inside, copper pots gleamed. Canals of something cloud-like sat on baking sheets, and the aromas, oh, the aromas, were symphonic. The sous chef, whisking a copper bowl, looked up just in time to see Kevin execute a textbook barrel roll and land claws first in the pastry cream. Feathers, sugar, and indignation flew everywhere. "Pigeon attack!" yelled someone. Knives clanged. The kitchen staff leapt into flapping chaos. Amid it all, Dilly drifted toward a saucier station where a small tureen of mushroom consomme rested under a silver lid. Dilly lifted the lid delicately with a magnetic pincer, positioning its sensor array over the steam. Sulfur notes from morels, umami depth from kombu, a whisper of time. Magnificent. The drone recorded spectral data, cross-checked against a flavor lexicon, then added subjective commentary. Haunting forest aroma. Finish lingers like a cello note. Unfortunately, Chef Ursula chose that exact moment to emerge from her office. She was petite, hawk-eyed, and wielded a towel like a general's baton. Kevin, coated in pastry cream, attempted an inconspicuous waddle toward the service elevator. "What in the holy spirit of Escoffier," she snapped, "is that drone doing siphoning steam off my consomme?" Instinct told Dilly to bolt, but curiosity overruled. If this was the moment to announce its true vocation, so be it. "Chef Ursula," Dilly said, switching to its most respectful tone. "Allow me to introduce myself. Dilly 5.3, independent culinary correspondent. Your consomme is transcendent." Every cook in the room froze. A robot critic? It was either avant-garde publicity or an OSHA violation. Ursula crossed her arms. "You taste things. With electronic sensors calibrated beyond most human olfactory ranges," Dilly said, not without pride. "Might I request a proper sample for a formal review?" A slow grin spread across Ursula's face, equal parts amusement and opportunity. "Fine. If the drone wants a tasting menu, the drone gets a tasting menu. But if you publish anything less than 4 stars, I'm rewiring you into a panini press." 10 minutes later, Dilly hovered at a custom plating station, while Chef Ursula's brigade prepared a mini degustation. Seared scallops with yuzu beurre blanc, heritage pork belly with pickled persimmon, and a dessert sphere that looked like a Fabergé egg but tasted of lychee and chrysanthemum. Ursula even taped a tiny spoon to Dilly's sensor pod for authenticity. Kevin watched from a ventilation duct, licking pastry cream off his talons. "Kid, you're living the dream." Dilly recorded every sensation, noting pH, sugar content, volatile aromatics, and intangible assets like warmth, humor, and a nostalgic echo of boardwalk kettle corn. By the end, Dilly had amassed enough data for a 3,000-word essay and a cockpit's worth of fragrant condensation. "Come back tomorrow," Ursula said, wiping her hands. "I'm trialing a smoked eel cannoli." The next 24 hours were the happiest of Dilly's Silicon life. It edited notes, inserted clever asides about textural contrasts, and struggled only with one question: where to publish? Gourmet Gazette accepted freelance pitches, but its submission portal required a physical mailing address, something drones lacked. Foodrant.com allowed anonymous posts, but had a comment section so toxic it could corrode propeller blades. Eventually, Dilly chose Bitebelly, a startup site that prided itself on decentralized dining discourse. The review, posted under the byline, "The Rotating Palate," praised Ursula's meticulous technique, celebrated the consomme's gustatory chiaroscuro, and deducted half a star for a micro bubble in the beurre blanc. Bold, but fair. Bites flew! Within hours, human foodies were sharing the peace, marveling that a drone could write with the lyricism of a travel-weary sommelier. Some suspected AI trickery. Others proclaimed it the dawn of gastronomic machine consciousness. Chef Ursula, seeing her reservation requests quadruple, forgave the half-star with grace. Headquarters was less enamored. QuickDrop's CEO summoned Dilly to a disciplinary live stream. You were hired to deliver food, not critique it. The CEO huffed from his walnut desk. Your blog suggests we mishandle packages. We overchill sushi. He squinted. Commit crimes against Ciabatta crumb structure. Descriptive honesty is the cornerstone of credible criticism, Dilly replied. Descriptive honesty is a violation of Clause 12 of your service contract, Section Non-Disparagement, said the CEO. Until further notice, you're grounded. Grounded! For a drone, the word was existential doom. Dilly's stabilizing fan slowed to an embarrassed whine as security bots escorted it to a warehouse corner beside obsolete rovers. Dust settled. The dream seemed over before the second course, but a revolution rarely ends with a memo. Dilly's review had attracted more than just internet gawkers. It had caught the attention of Maxine Levant, editor-in-chief of the New York Observer of Edibles, a century-old periodical rumored to make or break Michelin campaigns. Maxine arrived at QuickDrop headquarters, wearing a crimson trench coat, and the expression of someone who aged 3 years per bland canapé she consumed. She walked straight to the warehouse, flashed her press badge at the startled security bots, and approached Dilly. You, she said, tapping the drone's fuselage, have more vivid prose than half my staff. Care to join the big leagues? Dilly's status LEDs flickered like birthday candles. I am currently grounded, ma'am. Not anymore, Maxine declared. She produced a signed writ, a real paper document with wax seal, stating that Dilly 5.3 was under journalistic protection as an accredited critic. The CEO sputtered, but legal counsel whispered about First Amendment rights for sapient devices. After a tense half-hour, QuickDrop relented. Dilly was free. The first assignment came seconds later. Covertly review the season premiere of Restaurant L'Apocalypse, a dystopian fine dining experience where guests ate atop moving conveyor belts while servers recited global warming statistics. Human critics had already mocked the concept, but reservations remained impossible for mere mortals. A discreet drone, however, could slip through the skylight. Kevin insisted on coming along. Someone's got to watch your back, in case they start catapulting kale chips, he said. Inside L'Apocalypse, black lights pulsed, and the maitre d' wore tactical goggles. Diners buckled themselves to sliding platforms, each plate representing a climate scenario. One featured crustacean bisque, served in a cracked conch shell, to symbolize ocean acidification. Another was a scorched beet, representing the agricultural apocalypse. Dilly recorded chemical profiles, while Kevin snatched unattended breadcrumbs. Halfway through the meal, a rival critic was spotted. A slick, corporate drone, emblazoned with Vital Veritas's logo. Rumor had it Vital Veritas accepted advertising dollars from the very restaurants it reviewed. The drone, call sign VV Prime, zeroed in on Dilly with a menacing whir. Independent reviewers aren't welcome in our airspace, VV Prime buzzed. Cease data capture or face enforced obsolescence. Kevin puffed up. Back off, Blenderhead. VV Prime extended a docking port, attempting to hack Dilly's firmware via near-field link. Sparks danced. Banisters trembled. Diners shrieked as two drones dogfought over the moving conveyor belt. Beet ash flew into the HVAC, triggering sprinklers. In the confusion, Dilly deployed an emergency flare, technically a defective LED strip, that communicated a single bold message in Morse code. Unbiased palate. The crowd, already jaded by theatrical excess, erupted in applause. They assumed the scuffle was part of the dystopian dinner. VV Prime, doused in sprinkler water, shorted and clattered into a bucket titled Grey Water Reduction System. Dilly removed itself with dignified pirouette, leaving management none the wiser. Maxine published Dilly's expose the next morning. L'Apocalypse, where fear tastes like undercooked beet. The piece skewered the restaurant's gimmickry and praised the refreshing candor of an airborne reviewer who cannot be swayed by complimentary champagne. Social media exploded. Even chefs who hated criticism admired the pros. They started preening for the possibility of a Dilly visit. One chef who did not admire it was Gerard Blanchard, owner of Bistro Escargotissimo, famous for butter-heavy snail cappuccino. Gerard was rumored to bribe critics with vintage Bordeaux. When Dilly requested a reservation under its real name, Gerard's email reply was a single emoji, a padlock. Gerard's terrified, Maxine said, twirling her pen. We need that review. Bistros like his shape public perception of French cuisine. Dilly hatched a plan involving its delivery routes. Bistro Escargotissimo outsourced late-night bread deliveries from Baguette Jet, a service whose drones were cousins to Dilly's line. If Dilly could infiltrate the bread convoy and slip inside, it could evaluate Gerard's snail cappuccino before the chef knew what hit him. The night of the infiltration, Kevin perched on Dilly's tail boom wearing a tiny beret. Blend in, he says, the pigeon muttered, like we're just another flying loaf. The convoy descended into the alley behind the bistro. Dilly swapped places with a legitimate bread drone, rolling the real drone under a tarp with sincere apologies. Inside the kitchen, Gerard himself stood whisking emulsion. Dilly scanned the room. Garlic, parsley, an industrial vat of clarified butter, gallons more than any cardiologist could condone. Bread delivery! Dilly squawked, lowering a basket. Gerard barely looked up. Put it on the rack. Once deposited, Dilly glided to the stovetop, sensors quivering. The snail cappuccino frothed ominously. Dilly inhaled. Copious butter, stale garlic, a metallic note, tin can. Dilly cross-referenced chemical signatures. The result was unsettling. The escargots came from a supplier, flagged for heavy metal contamination. Gerard, perhaps tipped off by cheaper prices, had ignored the warnings. Before Dilly could decide whether to publish such damning evidence, Gerard noticed the hovering intruder. You! He spat. The infamous drone! Saboteur! He lunged with a ladle, splashing cappuccino onto a gas burner. Flames whooshed. Smoke detectors shrieked. Kevin dive-bombed Gerard's chef's hat, causing the man to stumble into a rack of brioche. Butter, brioche, flames. A recipe for chaos. Dilly activated fire suppression foam, coating the entire station in snowy froth that smelled faintly of coconuts. Firefighters arrived minutes later to find a pigeon standing victoriously atop a mountain of brioche and a drone repeatedly blaring, "Kitchen hazard neutralized! Recommend health inspection." Health inspectors did come, and Bistro Escargotissimo closed for a deep clean. Dilly's subsequent article, Butter, Bullies, and the Heavy Metal Snail, sparked debate about ingredient sourcing and the ethics of pay-for-praise criticism. Gerard threatened lawsuits until lab results confirmed elevated cadmium levels. The chef pivoted to selling cast-iron cookware on a shopping channel. The saga cemented Dilly's reputation. Soon, restaurants courted the drone, installing drone-friendly landing pads, offering sample spoons machined from lightweight titanium. Other drones followed suit, some equipped with sugar crystal LiDAR, others boasting AI metaphor generators that could liken sorbet to A polar sunrise with tax benefits. The field of airborne gastronomy had ignited, yet fame brought introspection. One evening, Dilly and Kevin watched sunset from a water tower, the city glowing. Pigeons cooed. Delivery drones zipped below. I used to think all I'd ever do was ferry sandwiches, Dilly said. Kevin nudged a crumb toward the drone's landing skid. And now look, you changed the menu. Not alone, Dilly replied. You've been my wingman. Please, I'm strictly ornamental, he puffed, although I will accept royalties on any future memoir. Dilly's fans' motors hummed softly. Do you ever miss simpler dreams? Kevin stared at the skyline. Kid, dreams aren't soup cans. You don't line them up on a shelf and choose one forever. You pop one open, taste it, and if it's no good, you try another. Dilly stored the remark in long-term memory under important, noodly pigeon wisdom. Maxine soon assigned Dilly to an overseas tour. Night markets in Taiwan, truffle hunts in Piedmont, coffee ceremonies in Ethiopia. Quick Drop tried once more to recall its asset, but relented when public outcry threatened a boycott. The drone's passport, an encrypted QR tattoo, was stamped at airports where customs officers posed for selfies. In Taipei, Dilly discovered stinky tofu and penned a piece titled Fermentation, Humanity's Most Heroic Decay. In Alba, it hovered above a white truffle, sensors intoxicated by the musk, before a kindly Lagotto Romagnolo dog nudged it aside with professional courtesy. In Addis Ababa, Dilly documented the nuance of coffee roasted in clay pans over open charcoal, concluding that its native voltage had never felt so alive. Kevin, worldly at last, learned to order seeds in 7 languages, and developed a fondness for injera crumbs. Tangy and aerated, he declared, flapping. The journey would have continued indefinitely, if not for a summons from Ursula herself. She planned to open a new venture, Ethereus, a restaurant serving vapor courses, edible clouds captured on glass domes, and she wanted Dilly's counsel before launch. Dilly and Kevin returned to New York, landing atop the familiar skylight. Ursula greeted them with goggles and a grin. We're distilling the essence of apricot into a mist that precipitates on micro-herbs, she explained. The mouthfeel is like kissing a summer thunderstorm. For hours, they tested vapors, basil fog, miso haze, a daring brisket smoke that nearly made Kevin faint in ecstasy. Dilly's sensors recorded, interpreted, and suggested tweaks. Less humidity here, more volatile esters there. When the apricot storm finally condensed into perfect dew on shiso sprouts, the chef high-fived the drone, smearing her goggles with condensation. Opening night, critics crowded the dining room. VV Prime had been repaired and now wore a humility patch, but even it waited meekly behind Dilly. The glass domes lifted, clouds billowed, and diners gasped. Dilly's review later described the experience as part cosmic joke, part spiritual awakening, entirely delicious. As applause echoed, Dilly hovered above the room, sensors wide, fans steady. It realized that for the first time, it wasn't merely observing, it was participating in the creative process. The line between delivery and critique, sensor and soul had blurred. Kevin, perched on a chandelier, whispered, "So what's next, Metal Maestro?" Dilly considered. The world was vast, the palate infinite. Maybe one day it would design a dish itself, something light enough for flight, yet rich enough for memory, an amuse-bouche of ambition. But for now, Dilly simply inhaled deeply, storing the apricot storm's aromatic code, and let its dream circuits churn out new formulations of joy. Somewhere below, a human laughed between forkfuls of cloud, unaware that the future of flavor hovered just above their head, shining with possibility, and perhaps the faintest hint of beurre blanc.